Welcome back to Indianomics. We were speaking to Shikha Sharma of Axis, R.K. Bakshi of Bank of Baroda and Professor J.R. Verma of IIM Ahmedabad on the issue, should savings rate be deregulated? Mr. Bakshi, if you were allowed to compete for the savings deposits with perhaps some kind of a minimum maintained for, as a minimum, say a minimum of 3% or 3.5%, don't you think there will be competition? Because there are a lot of private sector banks who are not getting as much of low cost deposits as some other private and public sector banks are getting. Is it not pretty much possible that they offer 4% or 4.5% with some incentives or disincentives thrown in? Is not that a perfectly possible scenario, Mr. Bakshi?
Lata, that is a perfectly possible scenario, but I think to the few points that you raised, one, before the break you were telling that 3.5% is perhaps kept by RBI to give the banks some margin space. I don't think that was or is the reason at any time. Saving bank, as has been said repeatedly by them, it's an operational account, and 3.5% in the today's rate scenario is a good account. The second, about which banks are getting and which banks are not getting saving bank, is a combination of a number of factors. And today I think the rate of interest is not the only thing. The convenience the customer gets in an operational account, the convenience of the core banking solution, the convenience of anywhere, anytime banking that he is getting is a very, very big thing. So which bank is getting saving bank and which is not getting can be a combination of factors: the location of their branches, the services, the products that they have, and like that. So rate of interest, if that were to be only an element, then I think it will not be a very, very correct thing, because the differentiation in product innovation and things should come on the back of the conveniences banks load up in the saving bank per se. But let me clarify, I am not against deregulation of interest rates. Because the questions you have put up to me have gone in different directions.
My question is margins.
It perhaps is a logical
my question is margins. Do you see margins getting affected for the banking industry? I'm still awaiting an answer for that.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Not immediately, no.
All right. Mr. Verma, what's your sense? We see a lot of banks almost always beginning their presentation of results by saying that this is the increase in our current and savings accounts. It's a proud boast. So clearly they're seeking for that category. If they are seeking for that category, if it is freed, is it not likely or very, very likely that the rate could go up and therefore margins could be impacted for banks?
You see, I think what the banks are finding so good about current and savings accounts is that they are relatively stable deposits. Particularly the savings bank is a stable deposit, and it is not interest rate sensitive. So you are getting a great deal of benefit on the interest rate risk of the bank. If you deregulate that, the interest rate risk management of the banking system will become harder, because you have a very large chunk of deposits which suddenly become interest rate sensitive, and you have to worry about that. I think banks are well equipped to do that. You have derivative markets and you have other portfolio tools available to do that. You're shifting interest rate risk from the household sector to the banking sector, and I think the banking sector ought to find ways to deal with that. But I don't think it is going to be really a question of margins, because I think savings bank accounts are highly competitive. What you have is non-price competition today, and what deregulation will do will switch some of the non-price competition onto price-based competition. What that would do is that what is now going above the net income margin into your cost-income ratio will switch into the net income margin. I don't think the final margins would be much impacted, because that is what you would do. If you're going to offer higher interest rates, then you will cut back on non-price expenses. So what you will see is a shift from net income margins going on to the cost-income ratio. Your cost-income ratio will come down if you reduce the frills and just pay a higher deposit, but then your net income margins will take the hit there. And definitely interest rate risk will be impacted, because suddenly you have a very large chunk of your balance sheet which goes interest rate sensitive, and they will have to find ways to manage. Your asset liability management will have to tone up to deal with that. But I don't think the primary impact will be on margins, not in today's environment. Yes, But in a high interest rate regime, I go back to the mid-80s story, when suddenly you had 7-day deposits which were offering 8%, and you had a savings bank which was offering only 5%. We did see a big flight. I think in just a couple of months, you had a very large flight from savings banks to 7-day deposits. Probably the RBI is still having that experience in its institutional memory, and that is what has them going slow on savings bank. But in today's interest rate scenario, where the short-term interest rates are low, that's not going to happen. And I don't think it is really margins which are under pressure. What I see happening are two: shift from non-price to price competition, and greater burden on ALM and interest rate risk management.
Yes, it would be much better if savvier bankers had to manage their ALMs rather than to have the depositor not get the advantages of interest rate movements, I would think. Okay, final round of yes and no from the other two bankers, since Professor Verma has clearly said he is in favor of deregulation. Shikha, where would you stand? Should they be deregulated?
I think with most other rates having been deregulated, Lata, I would be in favor of deregulation. I don't think deregulation is going to impact margins in a big way. As you've heard Jayant say and Mr. Bakshi say, I think it will give greater flexibility in product design. And we have to remember that the savings account is the operating account for the customer. And to the extent that the customer is interest sensitive on what he does with the deposits, the 7-day deposit allows him to reflect that anyway today, and the 7-day deposit is a deregulated rate. So I really don't see that much of a big risk to the way deposit rates are set or the way deposits are going to move. It's only going to make product design simpler, because a lot of stuff that you have to do around features to reflect benefits to the customer, you will now be able to do through rates if you want to do it that way.
All right. Finally, Mr. Bakshi, as a transitory step, how would you react to deregulation with a mandatory minimum of, say, 3%?
No, mandatory minimum is not a good step at all.
Okay. Mr. Verma? Deregulation with a mandatory minimum?
We should just go... No, I think deregulation is deregulation. There can't be floors and ceilings on that.
Okay.
If the competition drives it down to 0, you must be willing to take it. If the competition drives it to 10%, you must be willing to take that. You can't have a price band in a free market.
Okay. And Shikha, deregulation with a minimum?
I would say the same thing, Lata. You can't go halfway house. If you're deregulating, you have to do it with no floors. And I also agree with what Mr. Bakshi said, that you have to make sure that when we deregulate, and the deregulation is applicable to the entire marketplace, that there is a completely level playing field to the marketplace. So same priority sector definitions for all market participants, same subventions on interest rates for all market participants. Only then can you deregulate savings rate.
All right. That may be politically tough. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion. Well, up next, a familiar and striking face of the Reserve Bank, Deputy Governor Usha Thorat, won't be around at the central bank after November. Why? We ask after this break.